The silk felt like a lie against her skin, a whisper of luxury in a room that had become a torture chamber. Amara stood on the pedestal, a spotlight isolating her in a sea of judgment. The dress, a cascade of ivory lace and delicate seed pearls, was supposed to be a dream. Now it was a shroud for her dignity. Beatrice, the store manager, circled her like a vulture, her lips curled into a sneer that was sharper than any pin. Her eyes, cold and calculating, raked over Amara's simple black dress and worn handbag, which had been placed carefully on a nearby chair. They saw nothing of the woman, only the price tags she assumed were missing. Well, Beatrice finally sighed, the sound exaggerated and dripping with disdain. It's a beautiful gown, isn't it? A shame it's so far out of your price range. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. A few other wealthy patrons, women draped in designer labels and dripping with diamonds, stopped their browsing to watch the unfolding drama, their faces a mixture of pity and cruel amusement. Amara's friend, Chloe, who had insisted they come to this exclusive boutique, offered a weak, theatrical smile. "Oh, B, don't be like that. We're just looking," but her defense was hollow, a performance for an audience. Amara's cheeks burned with a heat that had nothing to do with the stuffy air in the showroom. She had felt the manager's condescension from the moment she walked in, the subtle dismissals, the way she was steered towards the forgotten sales rack in the back. But this was a public execution of her worth. She looked at her reflection in the full-length mirror, seeing not a bride-to-be, but a charity case. I can afford it," Amara said, her voice barely a whisper, yet it took all her strength to force the words out. Beatrice let out a short, barking laugh. "Of course you can, dear. They all can." She reached out and tugged at a delicate lace sleeve with contempt. The fabric, fragile and exquisite, tore with a sickening sound. A collective gasp echoed through the silent shop. The dress was ruined. Beatrice dropped the torn piece to the floor. "Now you'll have to pay for it. I knew you were trouble the second you walked in. People like you just want to play dress up and waste our time." Amara felt the floor tilt beneath her. The stares of the other women were like physical blows. Humiliation, cold and sharp, pierced her heart. What happened next would destroy everything this woman had built her petty kingdom upon. But they couldn't know that. They couldn't possibly imagine the storm that was gathering just beyond their gilded doors, a storm of 10 black SUVs and a man whose love was as fierce and unforgiving as his reputation. What would you have done in her place? 6 months earlier, the world had been a much quieter place, filled with the gentle rustle of turning pages and the comforting scent of old paper and leather. Amara worked as a librarian at the city's oldest public archive, a sanctuary of forgotten stories and hushed reverence. It was a world away from the cold, sterile opulence of a bridal boutique. She loved the silence, the order, the way history felt tangible in the weight of a book. Her life was simple, orderly, and peaceful. She wore comfortable cardigans, her hair was often tied back in a simple bun, and her greatest pleasure was finding a rare first edition for a grateful patron. It was on a rainy Tuesday afternoon that he walked in. The heavy oak doors opened, letting in a swirl of damp air and a man who seemed to command the very space he occupied. He was tall and dressed in a perfectly tailored dark suit that probably cost more than her car. But it wasn't his clothes that made the silence in the room deepen. It was the stillness about him, an aura of coiled power and intense focus. His eyes, dark and sharp, scanned the cavernous room before they landed on her, sitting behind the main reference desk. He approached with a silent, confident stride. "I am looking for something," he said, his voice a low, smooth baritone with an accent she couldn't immediately place. "It is a collection of early Joseon dynasty poetry. I was told you might have a copy in your special collections." His name was Minjun, and he was searching for a piece of his own history, a connection to a past he rarely spoke of. Over the next few weeks, he became a regular visitor. He wasn't just a patron, he was a student of her quiet world. He asked about her favorite books, her dreams, the life she led outside these hallowed walls. He seemed fascinated by her simplicity, her genuine kindness, her lack of artifice. He confessed that his own life was loud, complicated, and relentless. He called it the family business, a global import-export empire that demanded all of his time and energy. He spoke of loyalty, honor, and the heavy weight of responsibility. Amara saw the weariness in his eyes, but also a deep well of strength. She found herself drawn to his intensity, the way he looked at her as if she were the only person in the world. She made him feel calm, he said. She made him feel human. Their courtship was a beautiful collision of two different worlds. Minjun would whisk her away from the quiet library in a gleaming black car that seemed to glide through the city streets. He took her to restaurants where the menus had no prices and the waiters anticipated every need before it was spoken. Yet, it was the simple moments he seemed to cherish most. Amara planned a picnic for him in the city park, with a checkered blanket and a basket filled with sandwiches she'd made herself. He lay back on the grass, his suit jacket folded neatly beside him, and looked up at the clouds, a rare, genuine smile gracing his lips. "I have not done this since I was a boy," he confessed, his voice soft with a nostalgia that tugged at her heart. "Thank you, Amara. You show me a world I thought was lost to me." He saw her worth not in what she owned, but in who she was. He admired her intelligence, her compassion, and the fierce dignity she carried within her. She was his anchor in a turbulent sea. But as their love deepened, a shadow began to creep into the edges of their happiness. Amara's maid of honor and longtime friend, Chloe, was initially ecstatic. She loved the glamour, the expensive gifts Minjun occasionally bestowed upon Amara, the reflected glow of his wealth. But beneath her enthusiastic congratulations, a bitter seed of envy was taking root. Chloe had always been the more outgoing one, the one who chased status and luxury. To see her quiet, unassuming friend capture the heart of a man so powerful and wealthy was a bitter pill to swallow. "He's just so intense, isn't he?" Chloe would say, probing for weakness. "Aren't you a little intimidated?" His family, their business, it all sounds so serious. Her questions were always framed as concern, but Amara could feel the subtle judgment, the implication that she was out of her depth. She was a simple librarian who had somehow landed a king, and in Chloe's eyes, that was a cosmic injustice. The jealousy festered, turning their friendship into a fragile pretense. Chloe's compliments became double-edged, her advice subtly designed to undermine Amara's confidence. She was a snake in the garden, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The moment Minjun asked Amara to be his wife, it was as if the world stopped spinning. He didn't choose a fancy restaurant or a dramatic, public location. He took her back to the place where they first met, the quiet, hallowed halls of the public archive. After hours, the vast reading room was empty, lit only by the soft glow of the green-shaded lamps on the long oak tables. The air smelled of history and their shared memories. He stood before her, his usual mask of stoic control replaced by a raw, beautiful vulnerability. "In my world, Amara," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "there is very little that is pure. Everything has a price, a motive. Trust is a commodity, and love is a weakness to be exploited." He took her hands in his grip firm and warm. "But you are the purest thing I have ever known. You are my strength, not my weakness. You are my home." He knelt down on one knee, the gesture so full of old-world reverence that it took her breath away. He opened a small velvet box to reveal a ring that held a single, flawless diamond, a star captured just for her. "Amara, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." When she shared the news, Chloe's performance was worthy of an award. She shrieked with delight, hugging Amara tightly while her eyes drank in the magnificent ring. "Oh my God, Amara. He did it. I knew he would. You've hit the ultimate jackpot." The word jackpot landed like a stone in Amara's heart. It reduced their profound love to a financial transaction, a lottery win. But she pushed the feeling aside, wanting to believe in her friend's happiness for her. As maid of honor, Chloe threw herself into wedding planning with a terrifying zeal. The dress is the most important part, she declared. We have to go to Elysian Bridals, it's the best. Only the most exclusive designers. Amara was hesitant. The name alone sounded intimidating and expensive. I don't need anything too fancy, Chloe. Just something simple and elegant. Chloe waved her concerns away. Nonsense. You are marrying Minjun. You need to look the part. Don't worry about a thing. I'll handle the appointment. I'll make sure they treat you like a queen. It was a lie. Chloe's call to the boutique was a masterpiece of subtle sabotage. She spoke to the manager, Beatrice, and painted a picture of her sweet, simple friend who had a very limited budget but big dreams. She hinted that Amara was easily intimidated and was just coming in to get a feel for the experience. She planted the seed of doubt, ensuring that when Amara walked through those doors, she wouldn't be seen as a future bride, but as a future problem. The moment they stepped into Elysian Bridals, Amara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the fiercely air-conditioned room. The boutique was an intimidating temple of white. White marble floors, white silk-draped walls, and pedestals displaying mannequins in impossibly beautiful gowns that seemed to float like ethereal beings. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and unspoken judgment. A woman with a severe blonde bob and a dress that looked like it was tailored from condescension glided towards them. This was Beatrice. Her eyes did a swift, brutal calculation, scanning Amara from head to toe. She noted the simple, tasteful, but not designer, dress Amara wore. She noted the practical flats and the leather handbag that was chosen for function, not for status. Her smile was a thin, bloodless line. "May I help you?" she asked, her tone suggesting they had wandered in by mistake. Chloe, ever the actress, stepped forward. We have an appointment for Amara. I called earlier." Beatrice's eyes flickered with recognition. Yes. The dreamer. The word was coded in sarcasm. She gestured vaguely towards a corner of the store. "The sales collection is over there. You may find something suitable." Amara's heart sank. "Actually," she said, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach, "I was hoping to see some of the newer collections. I saw a particular gown online." She tried to describe the dress, a beautiful A-line with intricate lace detailing. Beatrice cut her off with a flick of her wrist. "That is a couture piece. It's extremely delicate. We only allow serious clients to try those on." The implication was clear. You are not a serious client. Amara felt Chloe's hand on her arm, a supposedly comforting gesture that felt more like a restraint. "Maybe we should just look, Amara," Chloe whispered, her voice loud enough for Beatrice to hear. "It doesn't hurt to see what's on sale." Every instinct told Amara to turn around and walk out, to escape this cold, hostile environment. But a stubborn part of her, the part that Minjun admired so much, refused to be dismissed so easily. She had a right to be here. This was supposed to be a joyous day. She would not let this woman's prejudice ruin it. "I would like to try on the couture gown," Amara repeated, her voice firmer this time, her gaze unwavering. Beatrice's eyes narrowed. It was a challenge, and she was not a woman who backed down. A cruel smile played on her lips. "Very well, but you should know we have a policy. If you damage the gown, you buy it." And so we return to the moment of impact, the sound of tearing lace echoing in the cathedral-like silence of the boutique. The torn scrap of fabric lay on the pristine white pedestal like a fallen feather from a wounded bird. Beatrice stood with her arms crossed, a triumphant smirk on her face. Her cruel words, "Now you'll have to pay for it," were a verdict and a sentence. The dress, which had a price tag equivalent to a down payment on a house, was now Amara's burden. The other patrons whispered amongst themselves, their sympathetic glances now mixed with a morbid curiosity. They were watching a public shaming, a real-life drama to recount at their evening cocktail parties. Chloe rushed to Amara's side, her face a mask of practiced concern. "Oh, Amara, this is awful. I'm so sorry." She shouldn't have done that, but her eyes darted towards Beatrice, a flicker of shared victory passing between them. The trap had been sprung perfectly. Amara felt a profound sense of isolation, as if she were trapped behind a wall of glass. She could see everyone, hear their whispers, feel their stares, but she couldn't connect. Her own voice was lost to her. All she could feel was the searing heat of shame. She slowly stepped down from the pedestal, her movements stiff and robotic. Her mind raced, trying to process the sheer malice of the act.
Why?
Why would someone be so deliberately cruel? She looked at the ruined dress, then at the hard, unyielding face of the manager. A single tear escaped and traced a hot path down her cold cheek. She fumbled in her purse for her phone, her fingers trembling. She wasn't planning on calling Minjun. She would never burden him with something like this, something so petty and ugly. She just needed something to hold, a familiar weight in her hand to ground her in a world that had suddenly become hostile and surreal. Her thumb hovered over his contact photo, a picture she'd taken of him smiling at the park. Just seeing his face gave her a sliver of strength. She wouldn't break. She wouldn't give these women the satisfaction of seeing her crumble. She took a deep breath, preparing to face Beatrice, to deal with this nightmare on her own. It started as a distant vibration, a low hum that seemed to resonate up through the marble floors. At first, no one noticed, but the hum grew steadily into a deep, powerful rumble, like the sound of approaching thunder on a clear day. Heads began to turn. The patrons and staff glanced nervously towards the large, plate-glass windows at the front of the boutique. Outside, on the sun-drenched, exclusive street lined with designer stores, a shadow was falling. The first vehicle to pull up was a glossy black SUV, the kind that governments use for transporting dignitaries, with windows so darkly tinted they were like obsidian mirrors. It stopped directly in front of the store, its engine a menacing purr. Before the onlookers could process what was happening, a second identical SUV pulled up behind it. Then a third. And a fourth. In a matter of seconds, a silent, perfectly synchronized convoy of 10 black SUVs had formed a formidable blockade, sealing off the entire street. Traffic came to a halt. Pedestrians stopped and stared, their phones already out and recording. The entire atmosphere of the chic, carefree shopping district had shifted into something tense and cinematic. The door of the lead vehicle opened with a quiet, decisive click. A man in a dark suit stepped out, his posture ramrod straight, his eyes hidden behind sunglasses. He moved to the rear door and opened it.
Len, Mignon Immortate.
He was not the man from the library, nor the man from the picnic. Today, he was dressed in a bespoke charcoal suit, his white shirt so crisp it seemed to cut the air. His face was a mask of cold, controlled fury. The air around him crackled with an almost visible energy. He exuded an aura of absolute, untouchable power. Two more men, his most trusted lieutenants, emerged from the second SUV and flanked him, their gazes sweeping the street with professional vigilance. Inside the boutique, Beatrice's smug expression had dissolved into confusion and then dawning horror. Chloe's face went pale, her eyes wide with disbelief and fear. She had wanted to humiliate Amara, not summon an army. Amara, seeing him through the window, felt a wave of relief so powerful it almost buckled her knees. He was here. Her storm had arrived. The small golden bell above the boutique's entrance chimed a delicate, cheerful tune, a sound so utterly incongruous with the moment that it was jarring. Every head in the store snapped towards the door as Minjun stepped inside, flanked by his two sentinels. The frivolous, perfumed air of the shop seemed to grow heavy, charged with a new and dangerous gravity. He moved with a predatory grace, his polished shoes making no sound on the marble floor. His eyes, cold as chips of granite, scanned the room once, taking in the scene with chilling efficiency. The gawking patrons, the terrified staff, the ruined dress on the floor, and Beatrice, frozen behind her counter. But his gaze didn't linger on any of them. It found Amara, and in that instant, the entire universe of the room contracted to the space between them. For a fraction of a second, the icy fury in his eyes melted, replaced by a deep, aching concern that was more powerful than any shout. He walked directly to her, his path unwavering, ignoring everyone else as if they were merely furniture. He gently cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs tracing the path of her tear-stained cheek. "Are you all right, my love?" he asked, his voice a low, intimate murmur meant only for her, yet it carried across the dead-silent room. She could only manage a small, shaky nod, leaning into his touch as if he were the only solid thing in a collapsing world. He held her gaze for a moment longer, reassuring her without words that she was safe now, that he was here to make it all right. Then, his eyes dropped to the torn lace and the pristine white dress crumpled on the floor. A muscle twitched in his jaw. When he looked up again, the coldness had returned, honed to a razor's edge. His gaze settled on Beatrice, who visibly flinched. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The quiet menace in his tone was more terrifying than any rage. "You," he said, the single word cutting through the tension like a shard of glass. "You are the manager of this establishment?" Beatrice, her face ashen, swallowed hard. The arrogance and condescension were gone, replaced by a primal fear. She could only nod, her throat too tight for words. Minjun's eyes then flickered over to Chloe, who was trying to shrink into the wall, her face a mask of pure panic. He saw her, and in his brief, dismissive glance, he understood everything. Minjun's composure was absolute, a terrifying calm that promised a meticulous and devastating retribution. He kept one arm protectively around Amara, anchoring her to his side, before turning his full attention back to the trembling manager. "This woman," he began, his voice level but laced with steel, his gesture towards Amara one of reverence, "is my fiancé, the future matriarch of my family. She came to your store today with a pure heart, looking for a dress to wear on the day she honors me by becoming my wife." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in the suffocating silence. "She can afford to buy this building. She can afford to buy this entire street and turn it into a parking lot. Her heart is worth more than every thread and bead in this room combined. But she is a humble and kind person, so she came here, hoping for a simple, happy memory." His gaze hardened, becoming impossibly colder. "Instead, you chose to insult her. You chose to humiliate her. You chose to judge her worth based on the label on her handbag. You have made a grave, irreversible mistake." He gave a sharp, almost imperceptible nod. One of his lieutenants, who had been standing silently by the door, stepped forward. He carried a sleek, silver briefcase. He placed it on the front counter and snapped it open. Inside, stacked in neat, tight bundles, was cash. More cash than Beatrice had likely ever seen in one place. "My fiancé no longer requires a dress from this place," Minjun stated, his voice flat and final. "However, we will be making a purchase. We are buying your entire inventory. Every dress, every veil, every pair of shoes, every accessory in the store. My assistant will wire the full retail price to your account within the hour." Beatrice stared, dumbfounded. Minjun then pointed a single, elegant finger at the ruined gown on the floor. "Except for that one. That one is an insult. I want you to burn it." His final piece of business was Chloe. He turned his head slightly, his eyes locking with hers. "And you," he said, the words dripping with ice. "You are no longer a part of our lives. You will not be at our wedding. You will never speak to Amara again. Disappear." He then looked down at Amara, his expression softening completely. "Come, my love. Let's go. I know a designer in Paris. He will create a gown worthy of a queen." He guided her out of the shop, leaving behind a scene of utter devastation, a ruined business, a broken friendship, and the deafening silence of justice served. 3 months later, the golden afternoon sun of Paris streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of a private atelier overlooking the Seine. The air smelled of jasmine and fresh silk. There were no price tags here, no judgmental eyes, only the quiet hum of creativity and respect. Amara stood on a pedestal, but this time, it felt like a throne. She was wearing a gown that was more than a dress. It was a work of art, a testament to love, crafted just for her. It was made of moonlight and starlight, with hand-stitched embroidery that told the story of a librarian who met a king. She looked not just beautiful, but powerful, serene, and deeply, truly happy. Minjun stood nearby, his arms crossed, watching her with an expression of profound pride and adoration. He had never seen her look more radiant. The storm had passed, and in its wake, it had washed the world clean. If you love stories where good triumphs and arrogance is brought to its knees, you're in the right place. The news had traveled back to them, of course. Elysian Bridals had been forced to sell its entire stock to Minjun's company for a fraction of its value, after which he had every single piece donated to charities that provided formal wear for underprivileged women. The boutique, stripped bare and its reputation shattered, went bankrupt within a month. Beatrice lost everything she had built her petty kingdom upon. Chloe, ostracized from their social circle and consumed by the shame of her public exposure, moved to another city to escape the ghosts of her own jealousy and betrayal. This story serves as a powerful reminder for us all. True worth, the kind that truly matters, is not measured by the labels you wear or the balance in your bank account. It is measured by the content of your character, the kindness in your heart, and the quiet dignity with which you carry yourself. Never, ever let the hollow judgments of small-minded people make you feel small, because the universe has a funny and often dramatic way of reminding the arrogant just how insignificant they truly are. Amara found her happily ever after, not because of the wealth or the power, but because she stayed true to herself and was loved fiercely for it. Drop your city in the comments below to let us know where you're watching from, and if you believe in the power of loyalty and true love, make sure you subscribe right now for more inspirational stories.